There was a time I considered sparing your wretched Transformer budget. But now you will witness its dismemberment! Hopefully I did Orson Welles a little bit of good in that intro. But I gotta say that I want to talk more about HasLab Unicron. And I want to talk about it for a lot of reasons. And there's going to be 2 or 3 more updates before this is over. So the number one reason I want to talk about it is, again, so you guys know that it exists. Quick flash. It costs $5.75. You need to order it by August 31st, or you will not be able to get this ever again unless you want to pay $2,000 or $3,000 in about 1.5 to 2 years when it comes out. You will pay up front. You will wait a long time, just like the Cell Barge. Now, the Cell Barge was a success in my opinion, had a lot of snags and issues along the way, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but the reality of this is this Unicron is 27 inches tall, 30 inches in the planet mode with the rings included. So, let's talk about those basics. Let's get right into this. Now, I've watched YouTube for a long time, and I've watched the big dogs in the early days. In all of this time, I always wondered, how do these YouTubers pull out $200 figures every day and review them? A new $200 figure every single day. How do they pull out $1,000 figures and review them? And how do they compare them to other $200 and $300 figures all the time as if it's nothing? Now, I can tell you, of the YouTube reviewers, less than 5% of them, so out of maybe 22, make enough money from the AdSense to actually buy this stuff. So it's just some other source of income, their savings, whatever, that buys this. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to afford 2 of these Unicrons, and if it applies to you and it helps you out, that makes me feel good. If it doesn't, and it's like, well, you know what, that's not my situation. Everyone's situation is a little bit different, and I am not here to coerce anyone to buy this thing. But I want to say that I was one of the YouTubers last year, or like 1.5 years ago, that got accused of pushing the Cell Barge on people and trying to get people to buy the Cell Barge, when all I was trying to do was to make it known that the Cell Barge existed and it was a thing you could buy for $5.50. Well, now I've got extras that I'm not going to go for, giving it away for $1,000. This thing, 1.5 years, 2 years from now, for $1,000 is giving it away for cost. You got to understand that. So I'm going to start by talking about the Cell Barge because it was the past thing. And if you bought the Cell Barge for $5.50 after tax, which this is $6.26 after tax, $6.27, $6.25, depending on where you live and your tax rates, this thing, $6.26, $6.27, you are going to look at trying to get this thing for $1,500 a couple years from now. Now, that's a reality, because that's the reality that barge buyers are in on. Plus, they threw in a yak face halfway through the whole campaign just to spice the deal up, and I guarantee you they have 1, 2, or 3 spice ups coming along, because you always start low and build it up. And so there's going to be something. I kind of assume there'll be a handful of minifigures that come with it that you could put drop a Galvatron in your mouth, maybe a Hot Rod, a bunch of small Dinobots. Something is going to have to come along in the middle just because that's what they do. It's what they did with the first Cell Barge. They'll probably do that with this. I can't guarantee it, but that's my thoughts. The other thing I want to say is that I know exactly why they set the goal at 8,000. Because they set the HasLab Cell Barge goal at 5,000. It hit 8810. And they said, well, hey, let's see if we can hit the 8,000 mark. So we're going to get back to what happens if it doesn't achieve 8,000 here in a little bit. But I do want to talk about the whole affordability factor of this and what I'm doing. Now, I am pre-ordering 2 of these. That is $1,254, $55, something like that. That is a lot of money. That is a lot of money, considering I didn't expect to budget that in in a moment's notice. So what I did was I took 36 hours before I pre-ordered this at all. And I went in and canceled 6 pre-orders that I had coming up of things that I wanted to review, that I wanted to have, that it was kind of on the fence items. So that freed up enough for one. And if you think about it in your budget, if you go into all of the places you pre-order, Shozy, TF Direct, TF Source, BBTS, Walmart.com, HasLab, all of those places, and you say, let me trim a little bit of those pre-orders off there. And I do dabble in Star Wars. Well, it's a 50-50 split, Star Wars and Transformers. But I freed up enough for one. Now, the second one was a different story. So in order to afford 2, I had to really look at what am I going to sell, and sold off a few things. Now, I did sell off the majority of my Chug collection. So prior to Siege, I looked at it, and almost all my loose, like 95% of my loose stuff that was Chug and not actual vintage G1, I sold it months and months and months ago because I just reprioritized my collecting. And I said, what do I want on my channel? I want Masterpiece on my channel because I like Masterpiece the most. And I do like some Chug, so I'll put some Chug on there. But the reality is the majority of the old Chug I don't need. And I kept about 7, 8, 9 loose figures that I wanted for upcoming reviews that I knew were coming. Now, quickly, I canceled some Siege stuff. I canceled some Legends items. I decided I'm no longer going forward with buying up front the Omega Supreme from the Siege line. And I gotta say, Hasbro has to take into account this will cannibalize some of their other figures that were already up for sale. Now, I don't have my Jetfire in hand yet, and I may even cancel my Jetfire. And I am a Jetfire freak. I may cancel it because I think this is that important and that pivotal. So now, if you do not get in on this, is there another way to buy? Well, there are actually 2 ways to buy. It's come to my knowledge that, well, Big Bad Toy Store has this up for pre-order for $775. You got to put $155 down as a non-refundable payment required. You basically have to pay their premium they're charging you above what you would if you just went through HasLab. It's got to go through multiple shipping hands. And seeing as how I had the barge, and my barges got a little bit dinged up on the way, nothing major, but thinking about it taking that shipment twice and getting double dinged, the actual inner box that looks beautiful that I wanted to keep might have gotten more damaged. And the figure might have actually gotten damaged. So that scares me and concerns me. Based on my first video, I had a lot of people saying, what about a third party? What if third party copies this? What if a KO company makes it and makes it 4 foot tall? Or even 36 inches, which would be more massive. Well, Zeta decided to call this thing ZVO2 Core Star. Gave a heads up. That is a nice looking Unicron head. I'm not going to lie. That doesn't tell you this is going to be a full-fledged Unicron that turns into a complete sphere, that has chomping mechanisms, that does all this. And for $575, maybe they can charge you $1,000. Who knows? Zeta has proven themselves in the Masterpiece third-party realm in combiners. They have proven themselves in making stable, large bots. And I can tell you that it does concern me that HasLab always has their bot mode on a stand. And that's a little scary, a little concerning, but it's not stopping me from pre-ordering too. What does this mean to me? Well, first of all, if Zeta does make one, I would buy it probably. I would figure out what to cancel and how to come up with the funds to buy it and compare it to my 2 HasLabs. That's where I stand with it. Now, does it make me want to cancel my HasLab? No, because we know Hasbro will eventually deliver, and Zeta is still, we're talking, what is it, 4 or 5 months since they talked about Raiden? Not one update on Raiden. Not one update on Predaking. So, they have delivered on 2 combiners so far. but they have not delivered on any more of their new like forward guidance. The forward guidance guided us to nowhere. And what is this? Forward guidance to 2025? Are they going to be the new fans toys of this? That gives us stuff 5 years later instead of just 3? So what if some company like Black Mamba or Wei Zhang or one of these other great companies comes along and KO oversize this thing? Well, first of all, it won't happen for at least a year. The usual normal stuff takes 10 months. This project would be more massive and more time consuming to KO. But it's not impossible. It could possibly happen. But you know, here we are 4 or 5 months later, there is not even a rumor or a hint or a hide nor hair, or none of my sources have leaked to me that we're getting the Cell Barge KO'd. Which, by the way, I'm about to get some Star Wars KO stuff in, and I'm going to review it on the channel. You know, hopefully some people like it. But the reality is, I stay in touch with all the KO, and I have not heard anything about the barge getting KO'd. And by the way, how profitable would that be? Not very, because guess what? Most places can't accept a shipment that big. So they'd have to KO and undersize it. The reality. They'd have to take it about 12% smaller so they could ship it to all the countries. Next point I want to touch upon is how I felt it should be 4 foot tall. Now, I held back on this on the first discussion simply because I just felt like there were more pertinent things to talk about. I touched on it for about 10 seconds and moved on. Well, let's touch on it a little bit more. If this thing was 4 foot tall, it would meet my standard for the large transformer so much more than 27 inches. I agree with that statement because it's my statement that I made. I even said, I guess I have to bring my expectations down to reality. But hey, let's just fantasize. What if it was 4 foot tall? Well, the price would be $1,500. Exact same thing blown up to 4 foot tall, $1,500. Do you think a KO company KOing this thing at 4 foot tall would charge you less than $575? No, they wouldn't. It would be over $1,000. Now let's look at the 28-inch Lewin Resources Optimus Prime. Now that thing is bigger than this, but it's still $300 something for a mold that has existed for nearly a decade. 2012 to 2019 is 7 years. That's the majority of a decade, and that thing is still $300 something for nothing more than a KO oversize of an Optimus Prime that has been KO'd 20 times. The next thing I want to talk about is, will we hit the 8,000 limit? Okay, that's a great discussion. Will we hit the 8,000 limit? This is going to get backed no matter what. There is no... And let me just go on record. Tidarium Hanger is going on record saying there is no end result where this doesn't get backed. Number 1, BBTS is already on this. Number 2, Takara Tommy Mall's on this. Number 3, in the end, they could just make that number they show us say 8,000. There's no chance in the world that number will say less than 8,000. And there's a lot of reasons why. Number 1, they have already sunk at least $100,000 into this project. At least. They will make their money back at 4,000 of these. They just set the limit because of the Cell Barge. It has nothing to do with profitability. It has nothing to do with, is it worth their time? It has to do with the fact they want to beat the last record. And they're not looking at 8,000. They don't even expect 8,000 as their minimum target to be the issue. They expect to see it far past 10. Simply because of what happened with the barge. And I gotta tell you, that's just how the business world works. I see this all the time. It's how the business. You always want to go bigger, better, greater. The next project's got to be huge. And Cookie Monster, I don't know. I don't know. I was gonna make a whole video about Cookie Monster, but it's just such a non-factor in what's going on in HasLab. I'm surprised there's not a G.I. Joe thing going on. So anybody, I want to hear how many people are in on this, how many people are not in on this, how many people are gonna just hold their breath till December, quote unquote, allegedly December when Zeta puts theirs out. Their head only. They only have a head. A head start maybe. But what do you think about the whole situation with this HasLab Unicron? I am in on 2. I'm not changing my stance. I'm going to keep putting out videos about this simply to inform people, update people, and I watch this. If I see a HasLab video pop up, I watch it. If I see an article pop up, I read it. That's the way it is. Because that's the same thing I did with the cell barge. I was accused of pushing the cell barge, and I just don't care. I could be accused of pushing this thing. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I'm giving you the information. You make your own decisions. And in the end, family comes first. Like, subscribe to Durham Hanger. Out.